Good morning, everyone. I'm Sister Jenna, your host for our new America Meditating segment called Wise-ish. It's your power boost for the morning. It's for you to take your dose for your inner cure. Join us every day, Monday through Friday, from 8:30 a.m. to 8:45 ET. Don't forget, take your dose. See you soon. Om Shanti. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to your spiritual vaccine hour. I'm your host, Sister Jenna. Ta-da! Our old set is back. We voted and I won. You know, I have to commend Santosh. He has been beyond just the best. And he just continues to think very forward thinking. And when he decided to come up with the new set for spiritual vaccine, you know, he was so excited. And he just looked so happy that yesterday as I sat there in front of our new set, in front of a green thing, I was missing my globe. I was missing my blessed sign that I got from Reverend Sylvia that I feel every time I see it. Yes, Jen, you're blessed, you're blessed, you're blessed, you're blessed. And I just didn't know how to tell him. And then this morning, I ended up talking to a friend of mine, and we were going through, I says, what do you think about the new spiritual vaccine backdrop versus the old one? And I think her silence spoke volumes, and I went, yeah, right? The simple stay-at-home one was really me, right? And we both said yes. So he came in the dining room and just said, we're having Dr. David Hanscom on. We should go back to the old set, and then we'll go back to the new one. And I was like, okay. And so, of course, we decided, let's just stick to simple. Stay at home, little production, and I was missing my comfortable chair, I tell you. And, you know, I'd created a relationship with this corner of our house, so it was just like, you know, when you have a relationship with a corner of your place, you just don't want to divorce them that easily. Anyway, we are about to have a really, really special show for you tonight. We haven't had a guest on for about 2 weeks, but it's not only a time for emotional and spiritual healing, but also physical healing as well. And last week I interviewed our special guest tonight on spiritual vaccine, Dr. David Hanscom. And when I was interviewing him on America Meditating Radio, I just wanted more. The content that he was offering was so rich, but due to time restraints, I wasn't able to continue the conversation as much. So I asked Antonia, could you see if Dr. Hanscom would be open to joining us for spiritual vaccine? Because what he has to share was absolutely priceless. So for those of you watching on Twitter or on Facebook or on YouTube or Vimeo, you can go to his Facebook or look for it on, of course, ours, because we've tagged him, for Back in Control, Dr. David Hanscom. And enjoy the conversation. And if you have any questions, put it in the comment box, and we'll have a chance for you to ask him some questions, for some questions and answers. And so we're going to look forward to that. Before I get Dr. Hanscom on, I need us to hold a moment of silence. I have not been watching the news, as you know by now, but last night, was it Santosh? Was it last night? Santosh is not watching the news either, and yesterday he happened to have started, he watched a little bit of it and was just, I saw it in his face, he's this blossomed, sweet-looking person. And when he came upstairs, he just looked like, Sister Jenna, it's so sad what's going on. And I go, what's going on? Is it that bad? Because I get my updates on Twitter. But he's like, it's so sad what they're doing to everyone. It's really bad. And I could see the pain in his face by what he witnessed. And sure and behold, his sadness and experience made me turn on the news after I couldn't tell you how long. So I says, is it really that bad? And so I turned on the news, and I believe we really looked at it for at least half an hour straight. And by the half an hour mark, I could feel my system. And I said, there is no way this is good for you. You can't digest what's happening in this country too much. But the question is, what can I do? That was my question that I kept asking. One, I'm in control of the way I need to feel. You can feel outraged, disappointed, angry, anxious, frustrated, determined, courageous, brave, clear, feel like you need to be a spiritual warrior. All the feelings are valid. So what I'd like us to do before we get David on the line is to hold a deep moment of prayer and of silence for the United States of America. And for those who are watching from around the world, and I know there are many of you, please send us your blessings and visualize America being healed and finding her peace. Let's go deep within. Pull the energy of God and send our pure vibrations to this land. Send it to the law enforcement officers. Inviting them to not be so aggressive anymore. I know you're scared, but your uniform carries power. Just don't hurt anyone that's innocent. It is the United States constitutional right to protest in peace. No one needs to be hurt if they're unarmed. Please. And now we send our good wishes and prayers to the leadership of this administration. For their minds and their conscience to awaken. That tonight, when they lay their heads on their pillows, they awaken. And return to humility and service. Om Shanti. Thank you for participating in this moment of reflection for us. It is so needed. Tonight's discussion is about health. When we spoke with Dr. David Hanscom, we were talking about the COVID crisis at the time. But now there's not just a physical crisis or there's the emotional crisis, there is, gosh, so many crises. But anyway, let me give you a little bit of his introduction. Dr. David Hanscom is an orthopedic complex spinal deformity surgeon who is based in Seattle, Washington, but he quit his practice and is on a mission to reintroduce true healing into medicine. He believes that doctors should spend quality time with their patients so that they can listen and understand their situation. He is the author of a book called Back in Control, A Surgeon's Roadmap Out of Chronic Pain, and his most recent book, Do You Really Need Spine Surgery? Take Control with a Spine Surgeon's Advice. So it gives me warm delight to welcome my new friend, Dr. David Hanscom, to our Spiritual Vaccine Hour. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
And thank you for participating in our prayer moment. I saw you holding that moment of silence as well. I appreciate that very much.
No, I think it's really critical, and you'll see as the discussion goes on that a lot of our behavior, in fact, a good share of it is based on our body's chemistry and chemical profile, and these little inflammatory chemicals called cytokines or safety cytokines. And what you're doing by calming down, you're actually helping your body heal, physically heal. It's not just a mental exercise, you're actually changing your body's physiology.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think is happening with everyone's anxiety level, rage level, anger level, fear level at such an all-time high? I mean, yesterday, David, I have not been in the news. I even chose not to watch the George Floyd video. And after just watching it for 30 minutes last night, I was like, wow, I can't, this is too much for my system. And even I have to take care of my health too. You know, it's not physically 100% strong anyway. So for me to be taking that energy in, it just was like poison to my system. So how would you explain the kind of energy that you're seeing right now throughout the whole country?
It does have a real physical impact on your body. And the bottom line is where your body functions is threat versus safety. And when you're under threat, while your body responds with a stress response that we call anxiety, it turns out that anxiety is actually not a psychological issue. It says danger, and it's how we evolved, it's how we survived. And anxiety is a very powerful chemical reaction to the environment. It is not psychological. So the antidote to anxiety is control. because if something threatens you, you want to control yourself with the situation to remain safe.
Mm-hmm.
When you control, you become angry. Turns out that anger and anxiety are the same entity. So basically, anger is anxiety with a chemical kick.
Hold on one second, just put a pause. Anger and anxiety are the same chemical reactions in the body?
Right.
Wow.
And either one's psychological. They're both survival reactions. The problem with anger is the body's effort to regain control. So it's destructive. So what happens when you lose control and you continue to lose control, then that anger can actually turn into a rage. And what's disconcerting about anger is that if you're angry and actually regain control, there's a dopamine surge that gives you reward. So when you're angry and succeed and gain control, you have a shot of dopamine and testosterone that feels good.
Yeah.
So when you're trapped and can't control things, your stress chemicals go to the ceiling.
Right.
It turned out it's actually a physiological reward for anger. That's why bullies actually have lower inflammatory markers than people who are bullied. So what happens, the human race, to me, if I had one message to get out to the world, is that we have to get this diagnosis of anxiety correct, because we have a very anxious society. We are very angry and reactive. We keep treating it psychologically. We talk about things like passion and peace, but this unconscious survival response processes about 20 million bits of information per second, 20 million. The conscious brain processes 40. So it's 20 million versus 40. So you can't get rid of anxiety, otherwise you wouldn't survive, right? If you didn't have anxiety, you wouldn't breathe, you wouldn't eat, you wouldn't cross the street safely. So anxiety is necessary for survival. It's a gift, but it's amoral. It's designed to help you survive. So your conscious brain, if it's trying to fight this unconscious survival response, you can't do it. So what you want to do is separate anxiety is what you have, it's not who you are.
So the anxiety is what you have, but the anxiety is not who you are. So what you're saying is we have to try to separate the conscious brain from the unconscious brain?
Absolutely.
Okay. In spiritual language, I would say that, okay, the soul is in the brain, so you're basically saying the consciousness in the soul has to separate. It's kind of a I'm in control energy versus there's another energy that's completely running my life and I need to tap into that energy, which I'd call maybe the subconscious or sanskaras, as they say in Sanskrit.
Sorry, I lost you there.
There's a word that we use in Sanskrit called sanskaras, which connects to the subconscious, that deeper layer of energy that's recorded in the soul, which is really running everything. Like the conscious mind can say, I need to do this, I need to do that, but it can't do anything. It's doing whatever it needs to do. It's like 2%. But what's really running the show are those deeper feelings that are sitting in the soul that we don't necessarily always know how to address.
Right, and you can't control those, but you can guide them. In other words, what consciousness gives you is a choice. And so, again, it's 20 million versus 40. You're not going to control anxiety, but you first separate from it, and then who you are is this conscious brain. And to me, the conscious brain is like this large radio receiver to the universe that allows the consciousness to come in, allows you to make choice, allows creativity, allows human interaction. Once you separate your consciousness from this amoral survival reaction, then you can thrive. I wrote a brochure called Thrive and Survive. It turns out as you train yourself to thrive and actually allow yourself to have a perspective back, which includes spirituality, mindfulness, meditation. So as you learn to thrive, it actually helps your immune system dramatically.
Okay.
It actually has a physiological change in your body because, again, when you're angry and anxious, you're full of inflammatory cytokines. It compromises your immune system. So paradoxically, the more legitimate your worries, the higher the chance you'll actually get sick.
Yeah, yeah. I remembered I went through a particular period. I had not really ever encountered financial troubles. And a few years ago, and I've just not been a person on the path of spirituality that really thought about finances. It's just like, I'll be protected, it's taken care of, whatever. And I had reached a point, something happened. I must have donated really too much because I was doing a lot of travels, and everywhere I go, we do a donation to each of our branches or places that I'll go. But apart from that, we had lost 60% of our donors at that year. Not because of anything was wrong, it was just the times. And for the first time, David, I had my faith was tested. And even though I knew that everything would be okay, that energy felt like it was like sandpaper through my system. Like I didn't feel clear and good. And there was a resistance, and I knew that if I kept having this feeling, this wasn't going to make me healthy. Like I just knew it. I just knew it. I mean, I know there's certain diseases that creep up on you that you don't really know about because they're so deeply rooted from way, way, way back in the day. And that's another work process. I was talking to Carolyn Mace today, and we were just really talking about the whole importance of really getting into the love zone. And that when you can get into this area of energy within you to really deeply love yourself, so much healing can take place. Would you say that the ability to really be in a spiritual place or emotional place or a mental place of self-love, would you say that that is a very big component towards our healing process?
It is. I'm going to throw out something that's a little bit backwards from the usual model of that. So the
Okay.
answer is yes. So the problem is, again, the subconscious brain is 20 million bits of information per second. The conscious brain is 40.
Okay.
So the process of actually connecting to who you are is actually, I'll use the word de-energizing the anxiety and frustration, in other words, separating from it. Then what happens is you connect to your self-love emerges. It's a little different model because we try to fight anxiety and frustration with positive thoughts, compassion, etc. But as you use the tools, which are not very difficult, by the way, to actually, I'll use the word de-energize the survival reaction, then we inherently are loving creatures, and that emerges. In other words, you're allowing it to emerge. If you're doing these conscious techniques to combat these survival forces, it doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
And so flipping it just a little bit, it makes a huge difference.
So tell us about some of the techniques that can help somebody with acute anxiety. Give us a few steps that they can take. We spoke in the green room before coming live that a person who might be suffering with that really can't do it by themselves. They would need some support or some sort of a guidance. Because now it's so many people are struggling with acute anxiety, and just the intensity of fear and worry is overwhelming. And I have no idea how America is going to come out of this. I can only visualize that it has to. But what would be the steps, David, that you could offer? There are now hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that you will be able to cure tonight when you give us these steps that we can take to overcome our anxiety. What are some of the steps? And Santosh, can you type them in the comments field?
So this is a paradox. So the essence of, I'm not going to use the word overcoming anxiety because you can't. You cannot get rid of anxiety because you will not survive. So you learn to live with your anxiety. In other words, if you fight anxiety from a neuroplasticity standpoint, you actually reinforce it.
You make it harder, yeah.
So I have what's called a ring of fire, and I don't know if I can screen share or not.
We'd love to if you can.
Can I screen share?
Can you try?
So
Can you screen share?
I'm gonna
See
do
if you
this
can
for-
try. It would be great. Because I really want our viewers to be able to really
see
learn
that?
from this. Yeah.
Is that on the screen?
Hold on. Santosh is going to get the screen share up. Let's just see.
So now
Can you try now, David?
The screen is full of the ring of fire. I have it up.
Okay, great. So you can screen share now. Thank you. Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So this is the essence of the solution, is that the green is the center where we can content, safe, connected, and we can get through with mindfulness, meditation, relaxation, which is great. And I think that's a desirable place to be. And again, when you're safe, remember it's just threat versus safety. And to boil it all down, it's really threat versus safety. And again, when you're in a safe zone, you're full of oxytocin and dopamine and serotonin and these safety cytokines, and you feel great. When you're under threat, whether it's a spiritual threat, repressed emotions, thoughts, physical threat, bacteria, virus, uncertainty, poverty, all those are threats that are not controllable.
They're outside of you.
Pardon?
They're outside of you, so of course you feel insecure.
Right. And remember, people think stress in terms of psychology is just a response to the environment. It's a total body neurochemical response.
Mm-hmm.
So the stress that is the most stressful, by the way, is the stress that you can't control. Because if you have a stress that you can control it, game over, right?
Right.
So people never talk about stress management. The stress that's the most stressful is the stress that you can't manage. So you're under this constant threat, with uncertainty being one of the biggest ways to create anxiety you can imagine.
Oh, yes.
And you're not going to get rid of anxiety. So what the key issue is here, you learn to live with it, assimilate it. I don't like the word accept, because it means anxiety is acceptable. Remember, anxiety is a sensation that is so unpleasant, it forces you to take survival action.
One more time. One more time. Anxiety is a sensation that forces you to
take survival action.
To take
words,
survival action.
It forces you to survive.
Nice. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so if something causes anxiety, the species of every creature, not just human beings, but every creature that did not pay attention to that sensation simply didn't survive. The species of people and animals that are alive today is actually survival of the fittest and survival of the most anxious. By definition, we're the most anxious species that's ever lived, because we're still alive. So anxiety is necessary. It's not going to go away. Again, it's not psychological, even though the psyche can be a threat. So again, think in terms of threat versus safety. There's mental threats and there's physical threats. They create the same chemical reaction in the body. So what happens with the ring of fire, and what happened to me personally, I think a lot of people know my story, where I was in chronic pain myself for 15 solid years.
You were in chronic pain for 15 years.
15 years. It was horrible.
Wow.
I developed extreme anxiety. I developed 15 different physical symptoms. I was miserable. I had no hope. I had no idea what hit me. I did not know how I went from being a fearless surgeon to crippling anxiety in one day. It turns out that it was probably a cytokine storm. It turns out in anxiety disorders, people have elevated inflammatory markers, very elevated. So it turns out that anxiety is probably an inflammatory process. So what happens is, if you look at this ring, the center is safety, the red ring is anxiety, disgust, anger, etc. And then the blue ring is what most of us do: vitality, drive, living life, experiences, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to be in the blue ring. We want to live our life and enjoy it.
Yeah.
But what I did, I was so hyper about not being anxious that I became obsessive about accomplishments and career and experiences. And I was extraordinarily getting into the blue ring to the point that I didn't even know that the red ring existed.
Mm.
And so that for me was repressed emotions, and I was tough, bring it on. I went to one of the top spine fellowships in the world. I did extraordinarily complex spine surgery. I did that by suppressing anxiety. Now, what happened is that it worked really well until I was 37 years old, and literally went from no anxiety to a panic attack in 5 minutes.
What were your panic attacks like?
I was driving across the freeway in Seattle. I was coming down a bridge at 10 o'clock at night. It's the 520 bridge. And all of a sudden, my heart started to race. I began to sweat. I felt faint. Obviously, I thought I was having a heart attack.
Yeah.
I never heard of a panic attack. And I had a panic attack on the freeway. Lasted for about 5 minutes, and I had no idea what hit me. I had to look it up the next day what happened. And once that happened, I could not stop it. So I started having panic attack after panic attack. So I am a fearless surgeon, now having crippling anxiety. I'm going, what happened?
Mm.
It literally took me 30 years of searching to figure it out. And it sort of came together just last month, almost to the month of when this process started. That probably what happened, I repressed anxiety, or repressed emotions, which was a threat. And it looks like what happened is a massive cytokine storm. This massive chemical reaction
Mm-hmm.
that caused my heart to race, palpitations, sweating, dizzy, the whole thing. So I had a chemical reaction that obviously we would call anxiety. Remember, anxiety is just a sensation. So just like you're laying on the beach, lying in the sun, sleepy, just laying backwards, you feel relaxed. Relaxed is a description of the neurochemical state, just like anxiety is a description of the neurochemical state when you're threatened.
Mm-hmm.
It is a description, not a diagnosis. So when I was extraordinary at, I was in this blue ring and I was avoiding the red ring. I didn't know the green ring even existed. I didn't know what contentment was, safety. I was so busy being busy, I had no idea the green ring even existed. I didn't even know barely about the red ring. I was raised in that environment, by the way, in a peaceful background. So I thought that was normal. So my center was actually the red. I didn't know what the green was. What happened over 15 years, I got stripped completely clean. And I ended up in this, so I actually lived about 15 years just in the red ring. I couldn't even get back to the blue ring.
Wow.
So at the end of the day, I ended up in the center just by default, and you don't have to do what I went to get to that center. Anyway, the goal of this process, by the way, is I'm in the center most of the time. I'm able to use the mindfulness meditation relaxation, which means I feel safe. In other words, you're in the middle, you feel safe, which optimizes your body's chemistry. But I want to live life. So remember, every new relationships, new project, new endeavor you put on this show, all that takes a little bit of anxiety, or a lot of anxiety. So anxiety is something that you learn to live with and learn to assimilate. If you're in the green and you're going to the blue as a manifestation or a reflection of who you are as a person, that's what you want. You want to go to the blue ring, but remember you have to pass through that red ring every time. It's a learned skill. Anyway, the way you decrease anxiety is simply decrease your stress chemicals. So as you learn to train your brain to be less reactive to anxiety, you pass through the red ring back and forth very easily. It's not a problem.
But not to
So
suppress, the red ring area, which many of us do. And I'd love to bring you back on the screen so you could kind of move your shared screen. Because I know one of the things that we do, we tend to suppress the anger or the anxiety. And especially when you're with, let's say you were a well-known complex spinal surgeon. So you had to go in always seeming like you're in control and you're on top. And it's not that that's a bad thing. But maybe if you were having one of those days where you felt very vulnerable, very, very weak, very sad, but you had to show the best of you, or maybe you became more angry, that's the means of suppressing that part of you, right? Then you really, after a while, you build up a kind of a erratic energy that you no longer even know how to feel safe, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, you said that absolutely right. I mean, I just hit me as you said that. I mean, I didn't know what safe felt like.
Yeah.
I didn't know I never knew what it felt like. So I was so busy that I would touch into the anxiety for a few minutes, or else I would crash and burn for a day and just sort of crash and burn. But I didn't know why. And you're right, it's erratic. And you keep bouncing off the red ring, right? You keep bouncing, bouncing, bouncing. So you never get to that center that's solid. And what happens is that now, I just wish I could start my career now. And I say this very humbly, because I am centered most of the time. As I take a new project, it's coming from the center. I have a strong starting point and can take off like a rocket, right? I have way more energy now than I did back when I was bouncing off this red ring. So that's what's been remarkable for me. I probably have triple the energy now I had in high school, and I put of energy in high school, because I'm not burning it up trying to stay out of the red ring.
Yeah, trying to run away from your anxiety and your anger. How long did it take you to retrain your thinking pattern? I know you might say your brain, but how long did it take you to retrain your way of thinking to really get to the blue part and also to feel comfortable in the green part?
Well, I'm excited about this because it took me 15 years. That's a long time. So what I'm excited now is that I evolved. I probably made every mistake you can imagine coming out of this hole. So I'm out of the hole, I'm fine. But even after 2003, when I came out of the hole, it took me a long time to understand the neuroscience, what happened. So when people start working through the project, literally within 3 to 6 weeks, things change dramatically. Then basically it's based on neuroplasticity, that your brain is going to develop where you place its attention. So the brain changes every second. So I'm now able to teach people actually learn these tools within 3 to 6 weeks. They start. And then once you change that filter, the brain keeps continuing to change based on that new paradigm. So people that start to get better keep getting better over time. I still practice the tools 15 years. And you asked about a starting point. There's a simple tool called expressive writing. And there's been over 1,000 research papers that document that this simple tool works. Simply write down your thoughts and you turn them up. Now, what's profound about this exercise is over 1,000 research papers that documents that it works. It appears that it has a direct effect on these inflammatory cytokines. So, for instance, when they do punch biopsies on volunteers, little skin incisions, why they found that the people that do the expressive writing heal those incisions twice as fast as people who didn't write. They also noted in the HIV epidemic that the writing actually decreased the viral load. We don't know why it works. Dr. Pennybaker started the research in 1982. He was on my podcast. And we asked him, well, why does this work? And he goes, I don't know. But we don't know. It's incredible how powerful this tool is for as simple as it is. It's not the solution.
But it reduces.
What's that?
But it reduces the symptoms.
Well, I think it's the first part of neuroplasticity. We have awareness and separation, is that you can't control your thoughts when you get separated from them. And so it's a separation process. And again, I call it mechanical meditation, which you would appreciate. And if you're a skilled person in meditation, I mean, I'm just not. I've tried many years to try meditation. But it does, meditation, of course, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm speaking to a person who's way more expert than I am, but in meditation, you become aware of the thoughts, and you separate from them, and you just move on with your life, right?
Yes.
I know it's a little simplistic, but...
No, you're right. You become aware of your thoughts, the thoughts that are wasteful or negative. You move away from those, and you focus on the thoughts that are more productive and towards your aim.
Right. So that's the classic neuroplasticity with meditation. You have awareness and separation, and then redirection. So I call it mechanical meditation. We have awareness and separation. And within 2 weeks after people start writing, invariably things change quickly. So it helps athletic performance, grade performance, decreases symptoms of asthma, rheumatoid arthritis, colitis, skin healing. It's unbelievable what this thing does. So that's always the starting point of the process. It's a simple tool called expressive writing. Then the reprogramming, which I think meditation is wonderful for that. So mindfulness, relaxation, little meditation exercises actually place your attention elsewhere. But what you do with meditation, you not only redirecting your attention to where you want your brain to develop, you're calming down your body's stress response.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that maybe mechanical form of meditation or a thought process. How can our thoughts, do you believe in the thoughts being a very big component in the healing factor of physical illnesses? Put aside anxiety, which tends to be very psychological or very, very much deeply connected to our personality and things that we've been through. And it can be so invisible too, which is what makes anxiety disorder so much more painful than someone with a broken arm. But are there certain thought patterns that you can offer our viewers to practice to help them to get rid of cancer or diabetes, or not even to reduce it, or high blood pressure or lymphonia, or are there certain thoughts that you like, that you would suggest that people can focus on and really believe in?
Well, let me go back. So the answer is yes, but this is very tricky because what doesn't is positive thinking. And the reason for that is that positive thinking is a way of suppressing negative thinking. So as you know with meditation, if you're anxious, you have to allow yourself to feel that. Again, anxiety is the response and it's not the psychology. So the thoughts are the problem for humans. I call it cursive consciousness. That I think the essence of chronic pain, by the way, is the thoughts. Remember, look at thoughts as a threat, and anxiety is the response. But what medicine has missed right now, which is so damaging to our society right now, is that these thoughts translates into changes in body's chemistry that we call physiology, which causes, when it's sustained, physically damages the tissues. So for any reader who said eczema or psoriasis or multiple sclerosis, these are real problems. We know in Alzheimer's disease, your brain actually physically shrinks because these inflammatory cells actually destroy the brain cells. So again, the thoughts are a huge problem because we can't escape our thoughts. You're exposed to sustained levels of threat, with repressed emotions being a bigger problem than expressed emotions.
Yes.
We also, okay, go ahead.
No, I'm listening. Yes, yes. Please continue.
Well, neuroscience in a Boston is study because thoughts and concepts become as real to us as this table does. In other words, your brain consciousness has to figure these thoughts out. They get embedded in your brain. That's why people get so, they take physical actions based on idealism and idealistic concepts. But remember, those concepts are as real as this table. Our brain doesn't know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer is absolutely, thoughts are a major issue.
Yeah.
They're very real. They create real chemical reactions. They create real physical disease. But it's a physiological process, not psychological. In other words, it's threat versus safety.
Gotcha. It's a physiological problem, not a psychological problem.
Right.
And doesn't the physiological problem come as a result of the psychological patterns that we have developed through our thought process?
Absolutely.
Okay,
right.
okay. I'm just curious, everybody who's watching, you are having a wonderful chit-chat in your daily dose with your spiritual vaccine with Dr. David Hanscom and myself. Thumbs up if you're enjoying this conversation, if you're on YouTube or Facebook. And does anyone have any questions for Dr. Hanscom that they would like to ask, or myself at this time? It would be a great opportunity to get into some questions now to find out if there's anything on your mind. Santosh, anybody has any questions, any thoughts? Let me check here, David. We've built a loving community here online. So Shalini has a question about it. Shalini, are you asking about where does God's presence play in terms of our healing process? David, would you like to address that?
Well, that's the exciting part for me, is that when you separate this unconscious survival reaction from your identity, you don't have a conscious brain that can thrive. So as far as neuroplasticity, the ultimate answer to chronic pain is actually play, giving back, but also the spiritual journey. Because when you're fighting chronic pain, you actually can't really reach out to the rest of the world, reach out to spirituality. And again, this becomes tricky again, because if you're using spirituality to combat pain, that's not going to work. As you allow these thought patterns to be de-energized just by using very empiric tools, then spirituality emerges. And it's a different, it's a creativity reaching out process, and it's wonderful.
Okay, great, great. So someone's interested in Dr. David. They believe in the power of hypnosis in healing the body and potentially any negative scars in the soul. Do you believe in the power of hypnosis?
Yes. I mean, again, you're decreasing your stress response. Again, I ask people the question, well, if anxiety is not controllable by conscious means, how do you decrease anxiety? In other words, how do you lower stress chemicals? So the answer to decreasing anxiety is simply lowering the stress chemicals. So biofeedback, acupuncture, hypnosis, light touch massage, all those help you to relax.
Yeah.
And I'm more expert than I am in this, but a lot of these breathing exercises actually stimulate the vagus nerve and actually decrease the inflammatory cytokines.
Yeah.
So definitely some very medical, physiological reasons why that would work.
Beautiful. Here's a great question from Priya. So many are suffering right now due to COVID. What is the doctor's opinion on Western treatment approach to mental health disorders with psychiatric medication to treat panic and anxiety?
It's actually the reason why I quit my spine surgery practice. People ask me, why is a spine surgeon, talk about anxiety? It's a psychological issue, right? The answer is no. And it turns out that we were doing spine surgery on anxiety.
Wow.
So the problem in Western medicine, remember, the essence of solving anxiety is feeling safe, which changes the body's chemistry. The business of medicine right now is taking away our capacity to talk to our patients and listen. So if you don't have a feeling of safety with your physician or other healthcare provider, where else can you feel safe? I mean, that's the ultimate starting place for feeling safe. And right now, medicine is becoming very predatory. It's a whole other topic. So people not only don't feel safe, they actually aren't safe. For instance, probably 70% of spine surgery should not be done. And when you do spine surgery pretty randomly without being heard or have a relationship with your doctor, it's just flat out risky.
Yeah.
So the Western approach to anxiety and relaxation is a disaster.
Oh.
And I actually hold the business and medicine responsible in a big part for the healthcare crisis and a COVID epidemic, because again, when you're not feeling safe, you're actually more vulnerable to disease. It's one of those paradoxes that the more anxious you are about something that's real, the chance of actually suffering from it actually goes up higher. So medicine right now is creating disability, creating anxiety.
Yeah, I hear that. Priya would like to know if you could talk more about the expressive writing process and how does one start?
So I just want to hold the book up for people just to look at. And this is the book that actually documents 1,000 research papers. And most of it's been done with emotional expression, where you write down just some deep emotions or deep feelings and thoughts. And literally within 2 weeks, things start to change dramatically. And what we found out that people can't really start very easily writing down negative emotions because they're afraid of them. Turns out thoughts are real, so there's actually a reason and a way to be afraid of those. But what I recommend starting with is simply a free flow of thought. I just do my writing before I get on the program here, where you simply write down your thoughts and you tear them up. Now you tear them up for two reasons. One of them is to write with freedom. The other one is to not analyze them, because they're not issues, they're just thoughts. So if you analyze them from a neuroplasticity standpoint, you actually give them reinforcement. One of my colleagues pointed out that by not destroying your thoughts, you're holding on to your pain. So it's once or twice a day, 5, 10, 15 minutes. I encourage people not to do it all day. To me, it's sort of a metaphor for separation. It's not like you're physically separating all day long. You're not getting rid of the thoughts because they're permanent, and there's trillions of them. So it's not a fixing process, it's just a separation process, and it's just an exercise. But I will say it is the only one mandatory starting point for the process. Things don't really work until you start the expressive writing.
So how do you start with the writing? For example, I will sometimes recommend to some of my students or friends or colleagues or associates, start with, like, we write a letter to God. Dear God, here's what I've been going through. And then there are times that we would write a letter to the self, here, Jen, what have you been up to, And then there's another letter that comes back, God responding to my letter. And then I'm also writing in the energy of as if God is responding to the letter that I wrote to God. So how do you start the expressive writing? Does it start with your name, or do you start with how you're feeling, or is it addressed to a particular, focus of a person?
Well, I think what you just described is wonderful, and I'm going to go back to the unconscious versus conscious brain. So the writing I'm discussing is just an exercise. It's just a separation process. Random, bizarre thoughts, crazy thoughts, good thoughts, it doesn't matter. You can scribble, and it's not legible. It's just an exercise. So somehow it separates you from your thoughts. Then the writing you described to me is nurturing this conscious brain. So that's the neuroplasticity in a different direction. But it's still really critical to start with the simple exercise first, and then the exercise you're talking about is much more effective.
Okay. Oh, well, good to hear. Good to hear. All right. So Lyndia Grant, who is a radio announcer on Radio 1, has a question that there are times that she wakes up and she knows that you've answered this question, but she's wondering if you could offer maybe something that could give her more clarity. That she'll wake up with a panic attack. Could be because of all the things that are happening. Any steps that she could take to reduce that panic attack? One, and secondly, why are they happening?
Well, again, this is just a chemical surge. Again, not psychological. Your body has just got this really massive inflammatory reaction. And so it's there. And when you're in a panic attack, there's things you can do with the parasympathetic nervous system, for instance, the deep breathing. Breathing slowly for 6 or 8 times per minute for a few minutes actually calms it down. You actually can massage your carotid artery a little bit, which actually upregulates the parasympathetic nerve.
So you touch something here and that you start to breathe?
Yeah, just a carotid artery massage right here can actually stimulate the vagus nerve a little bit.
Oh,
but just the
nice.
Breathing exercises, dropping your shoulders, a little meditation really makes a big difference.
Right.
Then again, I would actually do the expressive writing. It's a very powerful little tool to actually de-energize things quickly. And I just would encourage everybody to look at this stuff as just really simple, like mental maintenance. It's incredibly simple. It's incredibly productive. And what's exciting for me about this process is not only does people's chronic pain drop down, their anxiety drops to the floor, and they thrive. I mean, I'm thriving at a level I never existed before. I hear this comment all the time from my patients: when you're not fighting out this anxiety, again, you get to expand your consciousness in a way that's hard to describe. It's a wonderful experience. That's why I quit my practice, because I saw so many people being hurt by interventions, like spine surgery is a bad one. And I saw so many people not only healing but thriving, basically on a self-directed process.
Right.
That I just can't keep doing this anymore. I saw people the last 5 years have these 10 or 12 hour surgeries done on normal spines, and I just couldn't watch it anymore. It was really sort of a bad deal.
Yeah, I get you. Well, thank you for being so conscientious and caring so much about your patients. So I think we had some great answers, some great questions. Here's maybe just some questions that I might have for you. What's the main message that you would like to convey from your book? Like, do you really need spine surgery? Like from that particular book, what's the main message? I know you've mentioned it a little bit, but just in specific.
Well, with spine surgery, I am a surgeon, so I'm not against spine surgery by any means. And there's certain structural problems that need spine surgery. But the one message is there's a tendency to think, well, everything else has been tried. Spine surgery is very definitive. Let's try spine surgery. Spine surgery is only indicated if you can see the problem. That's number one. Second of all is if your nervous system is fired up and hypervigilant, the data shows over literally thousands of research papers that if you operate in the presence of a fired up nervous system, the results are consistently poor. So there's a way to calm down your nervous system, doing tools that we just talked about, writing, relaxation, etc., forgiveness. And then when you calm down the nervous system, and do surgery on a structural problem, the results are incredibly predictable. So I developed a quadrant that puts people in one of 4 quadrants, and the book's a quick read, by the way. So it allows you to look at your nervous system, a bunch of questions to do a self-assessment. It explains the anatomy as something that can be fixed or not fixed. So it allows you to make a very clear decision about who should not have spine surgery.
Right. Now, you've said many times the mental pain is sometimes more severe than the physical pain.
This is an interesting discussion because I think it's always worse. I mean, people that will sort of deny that. But the mental pain, I wrote a website post called Am I Operating on Your Pain or Your Anxiety? And this was one of the biggest turning points in my career about 5 years ago. I had 4 patients in 2 weeks, all males between ages 45 to 60. All of them had problems that were amenable to surgery. But I noticed on the questionnaires that they were under a lot of stress. And I finally asked them, I said, look, if I could get rid of your leg pain with surgery, and you had to live with this anxiety the rest of your life, or we could solve your anxiety and you had to live with the leg pain, every one of them said, I can deal with the leg pain, but I can't deal with the anxiety. Same thing with me personally. I have bad arthritis on my hip and knee now. I have way more physical pain than I had 20 years ago when I was in severe chronic pain, but I don't have the anxiety. It's just pain. So over and over and over again, I've had SWAT team members come in with total body pain, and the bottom line is they're stressed out, but guess what? When you're a SWAT team member, you can't admit to anybody that you're anxious. So the repressed emotions in those situations is remarkable. Within weeks, those people just come right out of the barrel and they do just fine, just with simple writing and relaxation. But just admitting you're anxious is a big deal. Okay, I'm anxious. So I'm alive, a human being. And the essence of the solution, by the way, the goal of the project, by the way, is to live in the entire ring. In other words, the goal isn't to stay in the blue ring. The goal isn't to stay in the center. The goal is to literally live in the entire part of the ring. You get to live in the circle, the whole thing. You pass back and forth. So as you're using your free will to go to the blue, to go to the green, to go to the red. By the way, you can also get trapped in the center. People get in the center, they're relaxed, they're calm. They actually become afraid of anxiety in the other direction. You actually can get trapped in the center.
It's a balance. It's a balance.
Right?
It's a balance. It's funny because in the teachings of Raj Yoga meditation, which my community offers, one of the biggest things that's consistently emphasized is, are you contented with yourself? You know, have you reached that point that you are contented with yourself and others are contented with you? And there's so many times I hear that point and I go, one day, you know, but then you realize how powerful it is to really reach a place of contentment, which means you've done the work, you know, you have addressed your anxieties and your issues, you know they're there, and you've also been able to live and be excited and be open and be thriving, you know, and yet when you're done you can just come back to your safe space, because that's really where you get your breath of life, so to speak. Yeah, that's beautiful. Look, I just love talking to you. Are there any other final thoughts that you'd like to leave with our incredible audience? Anyone else has any questions they'd like to ask Dr. Hanscom before he leaves? It was wonderful. Did everybody enjoy it? Thumbs up. If you didn't like him, thumbs down. I won't tell him. Thumbs down, thumbs up.
I can take it.
So any other thoughts? Anybody has any thoughts to share? Let me see something. There's somebody on YouTube has a question for you. Madhavi. Dr. Madhavi is on. Does the healing start from within or outside?
I mean, I think that's a great question. I have changed my thinking of looking at the body as a unit. I mean, the brain cannot function without the body and vice versa. And again, when you get, and Dr. Porges taught me with the polyvagal therapy, and so did Dr. Baird out of Boston, is that your body's reading signals from your stomach, your organs, all your internal systems are giving feedback to the brain. And then when you're under external stress, of course, these organs tighten up and you feel stomach pain, you feel chest pain, etc. So but also if you drop your shoulders a little bit of tension and relax, you actually flip in the flow. In other words, when you're under a mental threat, your muscles are tight and tense, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the threat keeps going. As you drop down the pose and actually let your muscles relax and you flip the switch, now you're flooding your brain with relaxation impulses. So I guess my answer would be sort of a bi-directional approach would be the way I would look at it. And the bottom line I have a little saying called STS, savor the second. In other words, it's about connected thinking. It's not about feeling good all the time. When you feel bad, you feel bad. When you feel great, you feel great. It's just connecting to the very second you're in, 1 second at a time. And then not everything's pleasant. And, you know, we don't have to make things that are unpleasant pleasant. But you don't have to take things that are pleasant and worry about something that you shouldn't be worried about. You just simply do what it is and solve the problems right there in front of you.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, so it's about, I call it connected and engaged thinking. It's really the way I look at all this. Can I ask the audience a favor, by the way?
Yes.
I just wrote a pamphlet. It's called Thriving and Surviving COVID-19. If you go to my website, you'll see a download section where, and I can I'll also email the PDF to you. But basically, there's 10 different things you can do to lower your inflammatory cytokines. If you become sick, there's this inflammatory cytokine rise that we call cytokine storm. We're not so sure it's a cytokine storm as much as the normal rise of cytokines, but there's ways of lowering your baseline cytokines. So if you do have this elevation of cytokines from getting sick, there's a much higher chance that you'll be able to weather the storm. So things that we talked about on this pamphlet, which summarizes a lot of what we're talking about today, is processing anxiety, forgiveness, expressive writing, just being common sense, like not watching the news like you talked about, looking at the family. There's a bunch of things you can do on that pamphlet really to lower your cytokines, your baseline cytokine level. So again, when you hit that rise, you have a much higher chance of surviving. So I'm starting a really very serious national email campaign with this brochure. We also have another brochure coming out of actually how you actually deal with the virus once you actually get it, which again is a multi-pronged approach. But by using your body to heal, there's a much higher chance that you'll actually get through this process just fine.
That's good news. It's really good news. We're going to put your website up so that individuals can have it. Oh, it's already up. And we thank you so much. What I'm taking from our time together is how important it is to keep your body at peace and happy. I mean, so simple. Like, just to keep yourself peaceful and happy. And even if stuff happens to it. But don't lose your peace and your happiness as a soul, as a spirit. Now, as much as I know that the soul has attachments, so it has attachments to the body and certain areas of the body, that if there's a particular area of the body that's not functioning, it can pull the soul's attention. And the soul can lose its happiness or lose its peace by generating so much thought towards that particular area. But another way that we can turn it around, it's like, okay, so this is breaking down. All right, well, that part's going to break down. I got to go and get a tune-up. But I've got to be happy as the driver in the car. Even the car's got to go into the shop, right, and get a tune-up. I'm the driver. I got to be okay. So I do recognize that there's a real important need, everyone who's watching today and listening to our conversation. There's no doubt that some days we're going to go through our downs, our ups and our downs, and there are moments we might have deep concerns. But, we have to take over the power of our own minds and begin to think in a way that can transcend whatever other external situations that we're going through, whether it's a civil war and civil strife in our country, to a bodily ailment or a bodily question mark, or our finance or our relationship. To what extent are we going to utilize our most powerful asset, which is our mind? Our power to think in a way that transcends the limits. And it's something that I really am focusing a lot on, because we say it and we live in an environment that supports it, but at the same token we have our ins and outs, and you want to be able to use this power that you have to see, well, how can I use this power to heal, to thrive, to feel safe. So I really took a lot from our time together. Any closing remarks? I hope you enjoyed your time in our spiritual vaccine space.
It's wonderful. I love speaking to, it's just wonderful. I mean, in the medical world, I don't get to have this conversation very much, but no, this is where real healing occurs with exactly you just said. And I'm very excited to be on your show.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. All the very best with your new project, and hopefully we'll see you again real soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. So that was a wonderful time together. Did everyone enjoy that conversation? Wasn't that awesome to just have a moment of healing, whether it's physical but emotional? But one of the things that I definitely took is the fact that really everything has to do so much with our thoughts. Sometimes I think to myself, if anything ever goes wrong, like I say, did I slip with my thinking and I wasn't aware of it? One. Secondly, is this old residue from previous lives that I haven't been able to tap into yet to heal? Or is it present? So the way I look at it is, if it's really, really old residue, there's nothing I can do, like, If it's of just a previous lifetime, it's like, But if it's present, I might feel a little bit really perturbed, because it's too present, and I feel like maybe I should have had more control over the choices that I make. But despite whatever it is, our thoughts are our greatest healers. And if we can keep using it, no one's saying it does the complete healing, because you get interfered. During the whole day, there's a call, there's a cell phone, there's an email, there's a relationship, there are bills, there are responsibilities, there are comings and goings. So your thought is consistently getting not just attacked, but an interference. Sometimes I'll joke with Sister Gita that we're on air and go, here comes our commercial break. She'll just come on the set or come off or whatever. We just had to protect Dr. David today by just telling her, sit down, about 2-3 times today. But the fact that you want to have a consistent flow of thoughts to build a very powerful vortex of healing energy is that sometimes we don't have that privilege. We have this person, we have that thing, we have that circumstance. So we have to be as consistent as we can for over a long period of time until it builds enough content, weight, and depth. So don't give up on yourself too easily, and believe in the power of your own thinking, And if you are struggling with what's happening in the country, I get it. Create another narrative, though. If we buy into this anxiety and hate and fear, we're just adding. And you have to find an alternative. You just have to. So find your spiritual community, your religious places, read the best books possible, learn a new instrument, talk to new friends. Just keep getting some new energies in so that you can really keep moving away from this old story that's not always helpful. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you really enjoyed our time together. I did. And be well. Be safe. Keep sending your good wishes out there. They will not go to waste. Give your blessings to your friends and family. And lots of love. Take care. And Santosh, will you play a meditation at the end? We'll play What If? Yes, I love this one. Take care, everyone. See you tomorrow. Om Shanti. As I sit here in quiet reflection, I'm reminded how my thoughts create my reality. I've accepted that I am what I am because of what I think. So what if for this moment I choose to let go of my various attachments to physical forms that have limited my potential and my capacity? What if I chose to be free from limitations of thinking? So just for a little while, I invite you to take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale. And imagine for a moment, what if I no longer had an attachment to my name? How would that feel? What if I let go of the awareness of the gender? What if I let go of the roles that I play, the titles that I own? What if I decided to release thinking of myself as a religion, a language, a nationality? What if I choose to just let go of the name, gender, role, title, religion, language, nationality, and let go of the awareness of the body? How would I feel? Who would think of me in this awareness? And who would I think of? I would think of God. And God's remembrance would fall on me and I, the living soul, would be completely free. Let me just sit in this moment for a little longer and just be free. Now gently bring back the awareness of your gender, language, nationality, title, role, name, religion, whatever. Bring it back to your awareness and see if you can bring the experience of freedom and peace as you go out into the world and play your various parts. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. Om Shanti.